Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming to our meeting tonight. This is a stakeholders meeting, which is kind of an informal opportunity to, after a presentation, ask some questions regarding the proposed project. The project tonight is for two detailed site plans in the Melford Town Center. One consists of a detailed site plan for 9 multifamily buildings, and the other is for infrastructure only for a future multifamily residential building. The Bowie Advisory Planning Board meeting for these two applications will be on Tuesday, June 11th in this room at 7 o'clock, and the City Council meeting for these applications will be on Monday, July 1st at 8 o'clock in this room. Right now I'm going to turn things over to Rob Antonetti and the applicant's team to briefly go over the project and a little history of the development in Melford, and then we can turn it over to any questions you might have.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Antonetti of the law firm of Shipley & Horn. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, St. John Properties. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our development team. We have Mr. Andrew Roud, regional partner with St. John Properties, and Mr. Neil Greenberg with Somerset Construction, partners on the Melford Town Center project. We have Ms. Jen Hearn, development coordinator with St. John Properties. We have Fike Tugberg with ACI Architects with him, as well as Deborah Exey and Denise Arslan, also with ACI, the architects on the project. With us tonight also we have Bowler Engineering, the civil engineers and landscape architects for the project, Mr. Chris Rizzi, Nick Speech, and Joe DeMarco here as well. So we do welcome the opportunity to present this to you. Tonight, we're here for, as Frank mentioned, for 2 detailed site plans. The first one we call the Melford Mansions. The second one is an infrastructure-only plan, which is really for rough grading, utility work, some stormwater management installation for a future multifamily wrap building, very similar to the Aspen building, which was approved by the city and the county through an earlier process. Just for some recollection, the Melford Town Center is a subset of the overall Melford project. The overall Melford project is about 431 acres. It's zoned MXT, which is mixed-use transportation. The Melford Town Center is an mostly undeveloped portion in the center of the project. It's about 129 acres. That has been approved for a mix of uses to complement the already existing approximately 1.5 million square feet of built or approved commercial office that rings the Melford project as a whole. There are also some other users in the project, including the federal government, Census Bureau, the Holocaust Museum, curation facility. There's several hotels that are, one that's built, and 2 others that are to be under development. There's the Thrive Senior Living Facility, which is a 140-bed assisted living facility, which is also under construction, which if you've been out to the site, you may have noticed that. The Melford Town Center does have history over the last several years in terms of entitlements. In 2015, a conceptual site plan was approved by the city and the county, which allowed for the mix of uses within the town center itself, which allowed up to 2,500 residential units, 260,000 square feet of office, and 268,000 square feet of retail. Along with that conceptual site plan was a 67-page design guideline book. And in that shows the various neighborhoods within the Melford Town Center. It also shows different product type that was anticipated to be developed within the mix of uses. One of the product types was known as multifamily villas or flats. We're calling them the mansions, but they're smaller buildings, which will be presented tonight. Fike will come up and present that shortly. But it's very similar and it's carried directly out of the Melford Town Center design guidelines approved with the conceptual site plan. Just moving forward, in 2017, there was a preliminary plan of subdivision which tested the project for public facilities testing and other requirements under the county subdivision regulations. That approved up to 1,793 units, 124,500 square feet of retail, 235,000 commercial office square footage, again, within the Melford Town Center. Those were maximum numbers. As you're probably seeing a trend here, as we move forward, the refinement of those numbers is based on actual engineering, the ability of the land to support buildings, parking, etc. So we're actually, the number is becoming smaller and smaller as we get to the final entitlement, at least from a zoning standpoint, entitlement process, which is encapsulated in terms of application types known as detailed site plans. For those of you who've been here and through the process already with us, you know that there's been 4 detailed site plans approved for the Melford Town Center. There was a rough grading DSP approved in 2017. In fact, if you've been out there, you'll see the rough grading that's occurred around that center portion, which is in anticipation of the overall development within the Melford Town Center. In 2018, there was the Aspen building, which is a wrap multifamily building with internal structured parking. And in 2019, we had 2 detailed site plans approved. One was for infrastructure for future townhouses and attached units for up to 293 units. And the Retail Village East, which is the retail component of the Melford Town Center, which is approximately 58,000 square feet. So all of those projects are moving forward through the various elements of planning, permitting, et cetera. As I mentioned, the rough grading overall is underway, and substantially underway, and you'll notice that if you go out to the site today. So tonight we are here for the Melford Mansions, and I'll just show a few sites. This is the conceptual site plan that was approved back in 2015. As you'll see, there's various, and it's a little hard to see here with the legend, but there were various use types inside the yellow boundary shown in there, which was the focus point of the amendment. It showed different elements of office, commercial, residential, and different types of residential. We are located into the, where you see the intersection of the 2 broken red lines. We are in the portion up to the right, I guess the northeast quadrant. There's a brown color there. That's multifamily units. That was supposed to be a higher density multifamily area. That's where the Melford Mansions essentially will be. And further to the east, you'll see some salmon pink color with an asterisk there. That is the future, that's the infrastructure area for the future multifamily building, which tonight we don't have any architecture for that building. We will come back with a site plan revision in the future when that is ready to move forward. But tonight, that's just really some additional grading, some utility work. The main element tonight is for the Melford Mansions. Again, what you see in those areas, this is an illustrative site plan approved with the preliminary plan of subdivision in 2017. And we only show that for reference to show how this development pattern has been kind of well conceived and consistent throughout the entitlement history of this project. Again, what's highlighted here, this is the area of the Melford Mansions. Moving to this slide right here, this is kind of the black and white plain infrastructure plan for the building all the way to the east. Again, there's no building proposed except a footprint, some rough grading, some utilities, and some stormwater management installation. And the reason you may ask, well, why are we showing infrastructure only if we don't have a building? It really is an economy of scale. If we're out mobilizing for the Melford Mansion portion to the west, it makes sense to go out and complete some of this infrastructure in one fell swoop. So we're showing that right now. Ultimately, that would support a building for up to 472 dwelling units with internal parking. It'd be a multi-story building, and again, the elements of that, the architecture of that, will come forth in a future detailed site plan application, which will go through a similar process as tonight. So, without further ado, I want to get to the heart of the presentation, which is the Melford Mansion. So, I'm going to ask Fike to come up. He's the architect on the project, and to go over the details, the architecture and the various elements of the Melford Mansion buildings. So thank you, and after this we'll entertain any questions. So appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Good evening. My name is Fike Tuckberg. I'm an architect with the Architects Collaborative Architecture and Planning Office out of Bethesda, Maryland. I'm thrilled to be here this evening making this presentation for you. We've been working on it for a while. I hope you like our presentation as well as the content. Rob took you through it. You know which site it is. I'm going to move on to a larger site plan so we can talk about it a little more clearly. The highlights of the presentation tonight are bounded by Lake Melford Road and Curie Drive, and north is up, it so happens, on this drawing, fortunately. And so we're looking at 9 residential buildings or multifamily villa concept, as we'd like to call them. We also have a community center. To give you some statistics, there are a total of 435 units, 721 parking spaces. Parking is provided in a variety of ways. One way is, as you see on the surface. Another way is that these are 4 to 5 story buildings above grade, and we have parking garages tucked into the first story of these buildings with 4 story above it being units. Then we have carport parking, as well as under buildings A and B, we have more substantial, varied garage-type parking. The more exciting parts of this project to me are the planning of this community. My vision was to create a plan that would be relevant over the years and not sort of feel outdated. To that end, we paid attention to all of the landscape and street standards, and we met all the guidelines. We're working within the prescribed guidelines. There's also the plaza, the sort of half circular plaza, half of which falls on our side, which I would like to talk to you about it later in the presentation. But in the planning of the community, we paid attention to break up the buildings and the site in such a way that at no point you're overwhelmed by the number of buildings or the size of buildings that you see. In fact, I find its building type very easily workable. There are 4 to 5 story buildings with approximately 40 units in them. I think it's a unique residential product. We placed our community center, which is roughly in the center of the site. And to get there, you're basically getting on Lake Melford Avenue, Avenue, and then you make a quick left, and the focal point of that street is the entrance to the community center, which I will show you more slides as I advance through the presentation. We've used, for inspiration and points of reference, we've used a number of the buildings that are in the area, but our primary focus is Melford Mansion, which is visible from our site, sort of catty corner located from the help of our plaza, looking all the way into our site, and we paid attention to that in the planning of our site, which is the top left picture and the second picture. It is a reasonably simple but elegant building. The materials used are usual and common to this area: red brick, white portico, metal or shingle roof. The next one is Bowie Mansion. It also uses similar element, punched windows, some reference to a classicist proportions such as base, middle, and top, dormers, metal roofs in part, and the Aspen project right across the street from us. It is not built yet, but it was also inspired by these other buildings. While we're not going to be identical, we don't want to be to the Aspen across the street, we are going to be related, we are going to be sympathetic in the way we plan our elevations, our buildings, and use of materials. So the right side of the slide describes the elements that we are using, not as a verbatim copy of what's on the left side as a historical reference, but as a more sort of a subconscious reference, such as dormers. We have a series of different entrances that we provided, and there are a number of other elements there, such as bay windows, balustraded railings, brackets that support the bay windows, and punched windows. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the classicist functions of the facade as I go through the presentation. And we developed a materials palette, starting with the roof shakes. We have architectural shingles, as well as we have limited use of metal roofs, not because we don't want to, but they are used in a limited fashion. We don't want it to take over. We use it especially in the community center. And then there are a number of different siding colors. These are the actual colors that we use: cast stone, highlights, and the brick panels. Our intent was to develop a community where no building matches another one. And if you're standing in one of the 2.5 courtyards or 3 courtyards, you will never see the identical view. and you will be surrounded by totally different buildings, hopefully inspiring the notion that you are in a community with variety of buildings, not sort of buildings that are stamped. So we numbered the buildings 1 through 7, the smaller buildings, and then the big ones are A and B. This is building 1. I thought I'd rather present it in a perspective form, which is more legible than elevations. You can see the tripartite scheme that I'm talking about in a classicist manner is that we have a brick base, then we have a different color siding body to the building, and then we have a cornice and a top. Hopefully I am using the proportion scale that is that I like, that I find elegant and appropriate for this. I think we've done a good job. There are a number of bay windows on both sides, on all fronts actually, and we've used some balconies to introduce some voids and variation to the facade. The windows are punched windows. The brick base is rusticated to give it a more of a better scale rather than sort of a brick wash. Building number 2, as you can see, there are different entrance features, different dormer types, obviously different colors, similar materials. Building number 3, they are located differently, so you will see different front treatments, but they all have parking in the front, they all have front entrance, they all have lobby at the entrance, they are all going to be accessible in the common areas. These are corridor buildings. You take an elevator up and then you can, it's a very short corridor, there are 10 units per floor, so I think it's a wonderful residential model. These are elevated buildings, as I mentioned, which is an important part. You have your mail room inside the lobby, etc. So they do come with certain amenities. Building number 4. Again, each building, we treat it differently depending on how many stories were above grade, and we adjusted the proportions accordingly, and we used those selection of elements that I presented up front in a sparing, sort of a judicious manner. Building number 6, number 7, and then you come to building A. Building A and B front Melford Mansion Avenue, and those are longer buildings. Part of the requirement was to have 70% frontage. I think we have accomplished that and sort of exceeded that. I wanted to make sure to break this building up also so that it is no building on the site is going to be perceived as a large building. And this building B, again, the same thing applies to this building. And then sort of our pride and joy, we're planning a fantastic community center. Again, our intent is to be very complementary in the use of materials, both to the historical references I mentioned, as well as to fit within our own community. But we've created much taller ceilings, the use of material, albeit the material, although the material is the same, it is slightly different. We've added some other accoutrements, so to speak, and accessories. We have the tower, as you can see, that will be aligned with the entry drive into the development, into this community. And then there is a drop-off in front, as well as some guest parking spaces where you can park for a few minutes to get a guest parking pass. Within this, we have a fantastic great room with a lot of amenities. We have a very large exercise room, which will have the state-of-the-art exercise equipment. And then we have a series of outdoor amenities. We would like to make sure that everybody in this community has everything they really need so that we can keep them there. And I think the best resident is one you can keep a long term and keep happy. We have an outdoor pool. The smaller structure you see to the left side is the bathhouse. Everybody has to come through the bathhouse. Then we have a separation glass screen wall with sort of 2 bars across from each other, few cabanas, and then an outdoor space that is available year-round. So I'm back to the plaza. This plaza was planned before me, but we're carrying through everything that was promised. The left side of the plaza is being developed with part of the Aspen building, and that plaza was planned as a more civic hard surface plaza with some trees, but not as much as the one on our side of the street, which I like. They set a great contrast to each other. One side is kind of a civic gathering place. The other side is a little bit more green, more pastoral, and it transitions much better into our residential community. There's a gazebo, so it's a more contemplative area rather than a kind of a large gathering. And finally, this is the vision that we have for this community. We wanted to make sure that all the buildings are well formed and selected, that especially look at this plaza, and we paid sort of the premium colors and the entrance features, architectural features to this area. We would like to make sure that entrance to community, entrance to the Melford Mansion Avenue, as well as the Prairie Drive facade is very well treated and respected. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Be happy to answer questions.
So thank you for that. I failed to mention this, but the aggregate of these buildings is approximately 435 multifamily units. So these buildings also, you may see that there's surface parking. It's a combination of surface and structured parking. So on the first floor of these buildings, there's pull-in garages for individual units on some of the smaller buildings. The larger building, where there's kind of, it looks like two buildings put together, they actually have a drive-in first level podium type parking arrangement where there's a common point of ingress and egress for it. And then again, that is supplemented by the surface parking that's shown around the buildings themselves. So overall, we're excited about the opportunities to continue with the entitlement process and move forward as this is going to be an important component of the overall mix of uses at the Melford Town Center. So we've done all the talking tonight, so I'd like to open it up to the floor for any questions related to this application or these applications. So we're happy to answer anything you might have.
I think the buildings look very nice. My question is, though, that I think there was a case or a court hearing or something which had to do with the master plan and the general plan as to which one applied to the project. And are you going to start building these before the court makes a decision on that?
Right now, we are moving forward as if the approvals in place are going to remain. If there is some issue with the court in terms of rendering an opinion as to that very issue, then we would look for the entitlement that was affected by it to be reapplied for and approved through whatever means the court instructs otherwise. But we feel confident that the ultimate outcome will be of a lasting approval for all these applications. Any other questions? Yeah.
Just to follow on to his question, do we know when that ruling is expected? Do you know?
I don't know.
So you're just gonna spend your money and hope it works?
We're confident that it's going to be upheld, and if there's any type of remedial action that needs to be taken, that the underlying approval can be reapplied for, and a lasting approval will survive any ultimate appeal. So yes, so we're moving forward. This project's, there's a lot of value in this project, and there's too much involved in order to just kind of sit and wait for all the various appeals that have been lobbed at it to be completely resolved. But again, we're hopeful that and optimistic that an ultimate approval will be in place that we can continue moving forward. Sir?
Is there an investment fund for this construction that people can invest into?
Is there an investment fund for people to, if people wanted to invest in the Melford Town Center? Is there? I believe the answer is no, but.
The townhomes will be for sale, and then the apartments, buildings will be a joint venture between our firm and Mr. Greenberg over here, and then the retail will be for rent. that'll be the structure.
So the applicants in this sense are looking to own and retain ownership of the multifamily, retail, and of course the townhouses would be fee simple sales to individuals, but beyond that, there's other identified investment opportunity just within the Melford Town Center.
Excuse me.
Ma'am?
I'm just curious what plans are there for all the extra congestion and schools and needs for schools and,
So,
that the highways are so congested already, I'm just curious. what the
Right.
city has planned for
so the city's process coincided with the county process, and in anticipation of questions such as that, it's kind of, I went through the various history of the entitlements. So the preliminary plan of subdivision, which was approved in 2017, analyzed the public facility impacts of this project, the number of trips that were approved. So Melford really, its earliest iteration was the University of Maryland Science and Technology Center, then the Maryland Science and Technology Center, then Melford Town Center as a subset of that. So throughout all that history, I bring that up is because there were contemplated trips to be generated from the uses all the way back from the beginning, the millions of square feet of office, which the market hasn't responded to. And because of that, the applicant, St. John Properties, they've invested in road improvements along 301. The 301's a regional road. There's regional traffic, from the north to the south, and not one single project can remedy that in its entirety. But what the local subdivision regulations and traffic regulations require is that each application mitigate its contribution to that regional road network. So for that reason, St. John Properties, actually a couple entitlement cases earlier, actually made road improvements to 301 and Governor's Bridge and 450 at some other areas. Going all the way back to the 80s, the state's put in the ramp system there. So there's been investment. Has it cured the traffic situation on 301? No, it hasn't. But with regards to the contribution of trips, and this applicant has vested the trips from this project when it was conceived all the way back as just a single-use office park by constructing the improvements there. But we welcome the opportunity to work and partner with the state, city, or any governments to continue to make improvements to the main line of 301 and Route 3. There are master plan improvements to 3. I've seen them. They need to be funded, but there are significant changes to 301 planned long range in terms of making the opportunity for more expressway sections, service roads, things of that nature. But that takes time, that takes money in terms of and the will of the state to focus on that. So we welcome opportunities to take advantage of that, along with all the rest of the community. But we've mitigated our trips based on those earlier approvals.
Speaking of improvements to 301 or 50, more specifically inside that park, when you come in from Melford and you have that circle, there's no visibility. Is there anything in your plan about fixing that? I've been in several close calls. I live behind and I commute to work. I have a job outside. And, people leaving, I don't know, I think maybe the Brick Institute or other things that are further back, they don't think there's going to be any traffic and they come along. And I'm talking about at night, say in the wintertime, normally you can see headlights. The shrubs in the elevation is such that you can't even see the headlights. So, I have to just creep around and make sure that, I'm not going to hit somebody or somebody's not going to hit me. So are there plans to fix that and make it a more useful kind of traffic circle?
So ultimately, there's plans when the traffic warrants it. There's a thing called warrant studies at intersections that look at basically trips going through an intersection that roughly put it. And once you trip one of the 9 warrants or studies that would otherwise indicate that a traffic signal is required, we have a condition in our overall approvals to, at each detailed site plan, to do warrant studies to various intersections within the project. That being one of them. I think you're referring to the one at Science Drive and Melford
Yes.
Boulevard. So, so ultimately, when that is warranted, that should be converted to a fully signalized intersection. The circle would come out.
Well, even without signals, it's not a functional traffic circle. I mean, I drive around Maryland, I use lots of traffic circles, and I can see traffic coming and gauge my speed, they gauge your speed, so that really reduce the number of accidents. There's just the way it's been executed is very poor. Simply re-landscaping some of the lower plants would help mitigate that. Be much less expensive.
Well, I appreciate the insight. I assume you live in Sherwood Manor?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll make a note of that in terms of the landscaping and the visibility. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Hi. So you don't plan to change to have a separate entrance and exit, it's just the one place for all these people? You said there's going to be 2 more hotels, 3 hotels, everybody going in and out the same road and no.
Right. So this was studied.
So scary.
This was studied also as part of the earlier entitlements. You know, with the interchange and the intersection there, and the width and the of the amount of lanes coming in and out. You know, when we've heard the comment before that if there was.
It in here, and I never heard there was going to be any change.
Well, there certainly isn't the ability to add a second lane to one of the highways, or I'm sorry, a way in and out. So a few decades ago, there was a trumpet interchange planned for US 50. So that would have been a possible second way out, but that was removed from the master plan of transportation due to lack of funding, lack of demand. So that's no longer planned. But with regards to the in and out, it was studied for adequacy at the time of the preliminary plan. It contemplated not only all the uses that you show here, but actually a lot more development, which has been reduced over time as we've gone through these later applications. So, so we're confident through the analysis that done through those applications that the level of service coming in and out would be adequate. Now, if there was an accident on one side, that's a comment that's come up. We've been told by our own traffic engineers, and it's been confirmed by the chief, fire chief at the time, that they would reroute traffic, given that there was enough to pay
how
the.
they'd reroute it.
And
Where
so,
are you going to send it to?
well, they would reroute it. If the inbound was closed because of a catastrophic accident, that they could reroute traffic to the outbound and split the lanes to have people coming in and out while that situation is addressed, the emergency situation is addressed. So, while two access points in and out would be ideal, the one access that we have is adequate. So, I'm by all measurements.
A lot of people. Of course, you don't live there, you're not going to have a problem.
I get there as much as I can, but with regards to safety, we take safety seriously as well. We're going to have residents, workers, employees. We want the ability to have people come in and out safely. As part of the applications or traffic studies, we also showed that by having a mix of use, that there's a better balance. It's not a complete balance, but it's a better balance than just having a complete office park where everybody in the morning's coming in, and everybody blow the whistles, going out at the same time. So you have people living and working in the same place. You have the opportunity for people to actually take some trips off the road. Will it be everybody coming in and out? No, but we know that provides the opportunity for that. So we think there's better balance with the trips that were approved for the project overall, with the mix of uses than just with one single type of use.
Yeah, you'd think there'd be an entrance and an exit separately, so that with all these people that are going to be there, plus the hotel, so it's going to be a mess.
It's something that, again, as the road network develops internally further, with Lake Melford Avenue and other roads.
We all felt like, I live in Sherwood County, and we moved there because it's
And, again, we're,
Things change, but I know that, but there really should be a separate entrance, a separate exit, I think, but
right. I appreciate your comments. Thank you. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Well, again, thank you for giving us your attention tonight, and we look forward to further developments within this project. But thank you and have a great evening.
Thanks for coming. Please sign the sign-in sheet as you exit at the room. Again, the BAPB hearing date is Tuesday, June 11th, 7 o'clock in this room. City Council is Monday, July 1st at 8 o'clock in this room. Thank you.
One last question, is there a place where we can view these slides that were gone through so quickly tonight?
I think we can coordinate with Frank
We
to
can
see us
put them
website.
on the website,
That
just for
would
the
be great.
website within the next day or two.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, by the end of the week. How's that?
Okay.
Okay?
I'll send
Can
them
we
to
do
you.
that, Jen?
Of course.
Okay,
I'll
great.
send them to you.